Hello YouTube, so today I'm going to show you how to make some homemade fishing hooks by yourselves with very little tools and very little time. So to start out, first we're going to need some kind of material to make these fishing hooks out of. What I've chosen today is what's known as music wire. You can find this at Hobby Lobby or at Lowe's if you ask. I also have a spring that came out of a magazine on a Nerf gun. So this is very important material to use for the hooks we're going to be making today. Second off, the tools you're going to need are an assortment of pliers. The two most important ones I would use for this job are your needle nose pliers and another set of needle nose pliers that has a rounder taper to them. That's important. And then lastly, another set of pliers with a nice big flat surface on either side. And then lastly, you're going to need a cup of oil and something to heat up the hooks with. I have a propane torch. You can get this for around $3 depending on where you go. So very, very cheap. So to start off with, we're going to take a piece of material, we're going to put it in our vise, upright like this. I'm going to go ahead and light up the torch. Now I've chosen to use a vise. You don't have to use a vise. If you have a long enough piece of wire, you could optionally hold it in your hand if you're careful enough. Like I said, if it's long enough, because the heat doesn't travel all the way down to the bottom. So next step, we're just going to heat up this piece of wire. Now I've chosen a thicker piece of wire to demonstrate on the camera, so it's going to take a little while for it to get hotter. There we go. So the first thing what we're going to do is make the curvature of the hook. So let's heat up just a little bit more. I'm going to grab the tip of it like this. A little hotter. There. And just give it a good bend straight down like a candy cane. And you can see that there, we got our candy cane. Now the next step what we're going to do is we're going to put an opposing curve on the hook, and what that's going to do is help when a fish grabs it to help correct and seat the hook. And I'll show you exactly what I mean here in a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat up the larger portion of the hook right on this side here. And we're going to bend it away from the end of the candy cane. Right up here, just like that. Just a slight angle will do. Now next thing we're going to do, right at the end of that bend right there, we're going to heat below that. Right there, that's perfect. Again, we're going to grab the top, bend it down a little more, again away from the direction of the candy cane. And then I'm going to try to, almost have that. Not quite. Let's try that again. Bend it away from the candy cane right there. We're going to heat up this middle portion right here. Nice orange glow. And we're going to grab that middle portion right here and then turn it in the direction towards the candy cane. That's perfect. Just like that. Now what I'm going to do is just straighten it out for demonstration purposes. There you have it. That's exactly the shape we want. So at the end of this bend right here, this is where our eyelet is going to be on that hook. So the next tool I'm going to take is our needle nose pliers that have that rounded end. And if you need a set of these, they have some for bending wire at Hobby Lobby that'll work just fine. So now we're going to switch our position on this hook about 90 degrees. And heat up right at the end of where this angle comes down. Right there. Again, we're going to get nice and long. What we're going to do is we're going to grab the end of it like this. We're just going to twist it down again, all the way until it's parallel like this. As you can see, just like that. Now, if you want to leave it like that, that's what you would want to do if you wanted to make a clip for your hat. And by clip for your hat, I obviously mean a fishing hook that we would want to clip on the end of your hat. So as you can see, we've kind of got our distinctive shape right here. Now we're going to switch back to the needle nose pliers and have the longer point to them for this. So I'm just going to heat up the end of the hook again. Right at the top of where our eyelet would be. Now there's two different directions you can take it from here, and I'll explain that very quick. Optionally, if you want, go ahead and turn on the torch so I can show you. Optionally, if you want, from this point, what we're going to do, we're just going to close this by grabbing this end of it and twisting it inward so it makes a nice tight loop. From there, you could just trim it off, and what you'd be left with is this. Just like that. Or, optionally, if you don't trust the strength of that, what you can do, in order to make this kind of hook that has this twist wrapping around it, what you're going to do is, once you, again, take this, twist it just like such, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute, and then what you're going to do is heat up this excess bit, and you're just going to take the hook and you're going to wind it around. We'll go ahead and show you how to do that, since that's the more complicated of the two. Because I can kind of hit two birds with one stone if I do it this way. So we're going to start with this anyway, regardless. We're just not going to trim it. Let's go ahead and heat up our hook. And it is going to be a little bit off-center, but that's okay. Perfect. This is exactly the shape we want. Just like that. Now to wrap it around, what we're going to do, very simply, again, heat up the hook. Right there. There you go. And again, this is much thicker metal than the last two hooks, so it's going to take a little while for it to get on. There. What I'm going to use for this is just another pair of pliers. These ones are a little bit thicker. And I'm going to grab it, pinch this, and twist. Just like that away from me. Then I'm going to heat up the end of it again. Start twisting the whole thing. I'm going to go ahead and just do one loop on that one since it's a much larger gauge of steel wire. Then what we're going to want to do, actually, I'm going to use, I left this out, I'm going to use a larger pair of pliers for this just because it's a thicker gauge. Normally you could get away with using this flat stuff. So again, we're going to heat up that eyelet. And we're going to get this blazing hot. We want this as hot as we can get, to a point where it almost starts to burn the steel. We're going to come with this, and we're just going to squish that bend down. That's perfect. Here's what our hook looks like, and so what we're going to do is just snip it off now. So I'm going to take my big pliers here. Just snip that right off. So I've gone ahead and snipped that off. Next thing we're going to do, as you can see, it's not quite very straight. So we're going to want to now straighten it out. So I'm going to take the flatter pair of pliers we have, like such. I just realized I called those snips earlier pliers. They're not quite pliers. A little similar, but a little bit sharper. So very easily, we're just going to hold it like this, get it hot, and then we're just going to correct it on our own, kind of eyeball where we want it to go. Oh, wasn't fast enough that time. Here's what we're going to do. So as you can see here, the hook's not quite straight. So what we're going to do is just kind of self-adjust this hook and eyeball it. So what I'm going to do is just hold it up to the flame like this, kind of give it a little eyeball, and just heat it up and bend it until I think it's sufficiently straight. Now normally what we would want to do is sharpen these hooks before we quench them, because the steel has not hardened yet and it would be much easier to do that, and grinding them on the Dremel tool after they've been hardened has a chance of ruining that temper if we're too hastily with our grinding. But for sake of time, we're just going to do this backwards. So what you would normally do, sharpen it with the Dremel tool, but this next step we're just going to heat these things up until they're glowing orange hot. Keyword orange. Then we're going to drop it in this little cup of oil right here. I'm just using regular old canola oil. You don't have to use anything special. But it does have to be oil, because water would quench these a little bit too hard and brittle. I should add, I like to grip it right in the middle here, because this area is taking tension, so it doesn't matter a whole lot if this doesn't get quite as tempered as the rest of it. The eyelet and this round hook part here is very important that we get that nice and strong, so I like to hold it right in the middle. Alright, so lastly what I've done here, it's a very important step, I put these in the oven and set the oven to 400 degrees and basically just let them temper out a little bit after we quench them. So I put them in there for roughly 20 minutes since they're so tiny, and afterwards I've taken them out and sharpened them with the Dremel tool, and now they are razor stinking sharp. You can kind of see that's got a good edge to it. So what I've done here, you can kind of see how I've dremeled in at an angle diagonally towards the top of the candy cane, and then on each side I just went over and then just touched that up, and then I went quickly over the top end of that candy cane just to bring it to a nice point. I did the same thing with the little ones too. Now unfortunately I don't know how to put a barb on here yet. I thought that possibly I could have used a straight edge. Well, the wire was hot. I could possibly have with a hammer nicked it in there, but I found it's awfully difficult to keep that wire glowing orange whilst it's held on to something tightly like a vise, which I would need to strike it with a hammer. So back to the drawing board on that one. So right now these are just going to be barbless hooks, but I guarantee you can still catch fish with these. Just takes a little bit more patience and a little bit more diligence, but 100% can be done. I hope you enjoyed watching today. If you have any questions or comments, or maybe you know how to put a barb on this, let me know in the comments below.